Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday, I guess. Well, this week has been going slow for me. Maybe not for you. Hopefully not for you, just for me. So I thought we could look at some resources. I'm going to switch to my overhead setup in a minute. Thought we could look at some resources that Wizards of the Coast gives for all our 5th edition wilderness adventuring needs, or at least so they would have us believe. The two resources I have are the Dungeon Master's Screen Wilderness Kit, which I literally just took out of the plastic. In fact, the plastic right there. So in fact, I think this is actually the container that the screen comes in. We'll take a look at that. And then before we do that, let's put that aside for a second. We'll look at what is in Tomb of Annihilation. What Tomb of Annihilation may tell us about how they want us to handle wilderness campaigns. We can compare it a bit to what we developed in the first stream in this kind of mini series, series of videos, and then we can kind of riff from there. I did pre-look at the Tomb of Annihilation bit last night as I paged over to where the section is. It's not very long. It's expansive, so you're either gonna look at it and say, "Oh, this isn't enough," or maybe you're gonna say, "Oh, they've done exactly what I want." So let's get into it. I don't have any other programming notes. Ooh, hold on a minute. My light here is making it way too. Let me see if I have to turn this off. There we go. You can see in more natural light. That's better. There we go. Sure that's in sync. So we're looking at Tomb of Annihilation, 5th edition. This one I think is the first. Is it the first only of the big what do you call them, campaign books, I guess, that really embraces or includes a real hex crawling element? I think it's the one I always think of. I feel like it's brought up enough. If there's another one that does this, let me know. I'd be curious to compare and contrast, especially if it's a newer campaign book. 'Cause I think this one, what's the year this one came out? I mean, nothing 5th edition super old, but this one's 2017. So this is the first printing, so 5 years ago. Literally September 2017. So yeah, 5+ years ago this one came out. So not the most latest and greatest. Here we get a lovely hex map. Lost the camera. Let's bring it back. There we go. Lovely little hex map. I mean, little in terms of those hexes, but they got them nice and small for you. I think there's a bigger map. I want to say somewhere. There it is. There's a bigger map for us. Notice I never took it out, or I haven't yet detached it. I think the thing is to note here is just in terms of usability. They have a lot to show, but these are small hexes. Like I kind of like hexes where you could take one of your figures and kind of stick it on there, maybe as a if you're going to use it kind of player facing, plop your piece on here. This you have to have a really small piece, or you'd have to photograph it. But that's neither here nor there for our purposes. But here we have it in its entirety. Now I'm going to try to zoom onto this part of the page because here's where the actual stuff that we're interested in. It looks like some of it actually might go on this page. It might actually start. And I'll do a little reading. Can I? Hold on, my desk's a little bit cramped here. There we go. When the adventurers mount their expedition into the heart of Chult, they have the option of striking out from any of several locations. Port Nyanzaru is the most obvious starting point. It offers easy access by canoe to two major rivers, the Soshan Star and the Tiriki. Journeys up these rivers make excellent shakedown expeditions for explorers just learning the ropes of this unforgiving land. I'm not sure what a shakedown expedition means, but I guess the kind of a starter. Characters can also strike out from Fort Beluarian or travel by ship to coastal landing sites such as Jahaka Bay, Kitcher's Inlet, Refuge Bay, Shilku Bay, and Snapping Turtle Bay. Chult is a land of adventure, and this chapter aims to make the character's wilderness journey a memorable one. And then let's say, by design, the adventure locations are not tailored to characters of a specific level. The adventuring party is relatively weak. It's up to the players to choose whether to flee instead of fight. negotiate instead of attack, or surrender instead of die. Yes. It's up to you as the DM to be flexible and to keep the story moving forward as best you can. An encounter is going badly for the adventurers, you can have the monsters suddenly withdraw, demand the party surrender, or deal non-lethal damage. You can have an NPC show up to lend assistance. Mindless predators might be scared off by a sudden volcanic eruption or earth tremor. In short, there's always a way to turn the party's misfortune into a fighting chance of survival. So I guess kind of the interesting thing here, and I suppose from a purely mechanical standpoint, this section has nothing to say about anything except for the fact that it is making mention of the concept of, hey, you're out there in the jungles of Chult. Things are not balanced for you. Things are just out there. And you as the party are going to have to figure this out. And then you as the GM, I think also, I wonder if I'm going to turn the light back on. Well, that's already kind of overlit. I'm supposed to leave it as is. Sorry that it seems to be kind of, overexposed on the overhead part. It's up to you as the party to take the chances, take the gambles you want to take, and know to withdraw from the gambles that you don't want to take. And then as the GM, you're going to have to, or you don't have to, but well, the thing is that they don't say, which is, I'm talking over myself. The first part is interesting, is they do mention, hey, GMs, if things are going poorly, you could try to fudge things, not in terms of dice rolling, but fudge things in terms of, oh, suddenly these carnivorous dinosaurs that wanted to eat you, they're running off for some reason. Oh, there just happens to be a volcanic, boom right when these raptors are about to feast on your downed comrades. Or, oh, look, an NPC just showed up. Those kinds of kind of fudging of the situation. I mean, the interesting thing that they don't mention that I feel like is super important is that you need to tell the party. The party needs to be made aware of it. This section, like these these campaign books are all written for the GM's perspective, not the player's perspective. This is not for players' eyes. So I wish they would have put something in here of like, okay, hey, this stuff's not balanced. You know that as the GM, and sure, we're gonna hint at a couple of tools you can do if you need to futz things around so that they don't die, if that's how you want to play. But make sure the players know this in character. Really, I would just say out of character and in character. Hey, we're gonna play here, and by the way, when you go out there in that wilderness, stuff is not balanced to you. So I appreciate both that they are taking on that fact that one of that's kind of almost tenets of the OSR, right? That the encounters aren't balanced, and at least in terms of the wilderness for 5th edition, they are embracing in this element, at least in terms of this particular campaign. However, it would have been nice to give the GM some guidance as to let your players know, because that's one of the big things that comes up, I think, when running these sorts of game types situations with a party, is having those expectations be in check. If the party leaves Chult or whatever, leaves Port Nyanzaru, I should say, and they are and they feel like that things are balanced the way they're used to in other adventures, other campaigns, they're going to come in for a rude awakening. And how are they going to handle that? Some folks are going to rise to the occasion, other ones are not going to like it at all. So help them be aware. Now we're going to get into the nitty gritty, which is what we're really interested in. Some things that they say to do. So they say use the poster map, which is what I showed that's in the back of the book. Identify the hex in which the party is currently located. Don't share this information with the players if the party is lost. Otherwise, show the players the party's location by pointing to the appropriate hex on their map of Chult. This is where if I was playing in person, this makes less of a difference in a digital game. Playing in person, that's why it's nice to have that bigger map where I could take someone's mini and say, "Paplunk, you believe you are right there in the middle," in this case, in the middle of the Shining Sea. It says, let the players, but they do say, hey, don't share this information if the players are lost. So you're not supposed to, you have to keep a kind of maybe you have a GM's layer or your own little mini map that shows where the players actually are. Or you could just pull if they're lost, you could pull their piece off the board. It says, let the players determine what direction the party wants to go and whether the party plans to move at a normal pace, a fast pace, or a slow pace. And we'll get to those distances right away. So that's interesting. So we've got normal, fast, and slow, and hopefully there'll be some interesting push and pulls between what method you should choose, or your advantages and disadvantages of each of these. Let the players choose. Let the players choose a navigator, then make a wisdom survival check. Trying to get it. Yeah, I have all this light and shadow in this room, but that's a little bit better. Let the players choose a navigator, then make a wisdom survival check on the navigator's behalf to determine if the party becomes lost, which is kind of similar to what I had, right? So you pick a navigator, so that's good. At least that's one role that they're codifying in a sense. Check for random encounters throughout the day. We will have to go to the appendix for that part. And then at the end of the day, check to see if any party members are dehydrated, and then they have dehydration. So dehydration is interesting because it's actually something that usually or often gets overlooked is the water element. We usually think of the food part. We don't. Oftentimes, I think the water just kind of gets forgotten a little bit. I mean, it's one of those things that's harder to quantify. You know, how much water does a water skin hold? It's not easy to say I bring 50 water skins for 50 days kind of thing. And I feel like usually we're more concentrated on the food part and we assume they can get to water. But in something like a jungle that has a lot of it, or say a desert where getting potable for different reasons, getting potable water can be extremely difficult. It's a good thing to have this as another tension on the party. And by the way, I don't think your Goodberry won't. I don't think Goodberry will counteract dehydration. So that's a little something you can throw at if you've got the druid or whatever in the party. This is watered down apple cider for the working man. So you got that. Okay, so now we get on to travel distances. Each hex measures 10 miles across. So we're using 10-mile hexes. Characters moving at a normal pace can travel 1 hex per day on foot through coastal, jungle, mountain, swamp, or wasteland terrains. 2 hexes per day if they're traveling by canoe on a river or lake. The rate of travel up or down the river is the same. The rivers are so sluggish that the current is almost imperceptible. Without canoes, the normal rate of travel along a river is the same as through the surrounding terrain. Canoes move 1 hex per day through swamp. So we only have basically, at least in terms of travel, 2 different rates. One is basically your waterways, and then one is on land. If the characters move at a fast pace, the easiest way to deal with progress is to roll a d4. On a roll of 3 or 4, they advance 1 additional hex that day. Characters moving at a fast pace take a penalty to some of their perception checks, and they are more likely to miss clues and walk into ambushes. If a character set a slow pace, you also roll a d4. On a roll of 1 to 2, they advance 1 fewer hex that day. On any other result, the caution is rewarded, and they travel the same distance as a group moving in the normal pace. Characters moving at a slow pace can move stealthily. As long as they're not in the open, they can try to surprise or sneak by other creatures they encounter. So I do like the fact that you can choose to move quickly, slowly, or regular. I don't know if I love the way they're doing it. I would rather just say if you move fast, I'm giving you an extra hex. I'll give you the extra hex, and then you're going to take some penalties. And then if you're walking slow, you're going to move slower. So we'll take that penalty, and then you get the advantages, which are that you're moving. I guess in this case, they're saying that you want to move stealthily. That's pretty much your lone advantage. I also would I would kind of say, and it's interesting they say might take a -5 penalty to their passive. Oh, I guess because it's passive, we're not rolling. So I would say just roll for disadvantage. But here, if they're using the penalty, they're using a fixed penalty because we're using their passive numbers. I would give them some advantage on the slow pace, which it doesn't look like they do. And then I would just take out the roll. I don't know if I need the roll, but it's up to you if you want to do it. It's basically a 50% chance that you actually move faster or slower than normal, plus those penalties. I don't need to be that harsh, I guess, because you move quickly, you're going to take these penalties, and then you don't actually move faster than you would have anyway. I feel like that's not fair, because you can tell them and they can make the choice accordingly. But I don't know. I just give them the extra juice. And so we have a note here about tracking. If you want to use tracking in miles, instead of tracking movement by hexes, you can keep track of the actual distances covered: 10 miles per day at a normal pace, 15 miles per day on a fast pace, or 9 miles per day at a slow pace. But this is likely to be more bother than it's worth if the group switches pace from day to day. A character with a flying speed of 30 feet can travel 4 miles per hour. Yeah, I think just doing like hexes per whatever is good. So their movement rates are not particularly fast, though there's no clear terrain here, I don't think. Let's see. The terrain that I guess they're saying is coast, jungle, mountain, swamp, or wasteland. Coastal, I'm guessing that's literally walking on sand. I'm thinking it must be, and not grasslands or anything like that. So it's all fairly difficult terrain. So you get 10 miles. 10 miles if you're going normally, 15 miles on a fast pace. So that's not extreme. I mean, I think a lot of folks end up having a lot more movement than that. And looking at my bit, let's see. If we're doing 10 miles a day, I have even less for swamp. I think I have one hex, like 1 day for, yeah, I have like 6 miles a day through swamp. That's what at least was my first pick, my first bit. And then jungle, I also had a slower pace. But these paces are very reasonable. I could see definitely taking these and saying, okay, that makes sense. And I would switch it to, I like 6 mile hexes more than 10 mile hexes. That's just a personal thing on my behalf. So I could switch those up, and I might round it off and use, so it's 2, be, if we're doing one, let's see, 10 miles per day at a normal pace, I would just bump that up to 12 to make it 2 6 mile hexes, and then just figure out things. And that would make it 18 per day on a fast pace, or 6 at a slow pace kind of thing. Hey, Brian Smith. Glad you made it. So that's reasonable. The thing is that I don't love, really the only thing I don't love about this setup, other than the kind of rolling dice, which is just a niggle that I would maybe avoid, is I don't love that they've basically merged all the terrain together. I would like to have some more differentiation between moving through along the coast, in the jungle, through mountains, through swamps, or through wastelands. We'll see. We'll get on when we get to doing the random encounters if there are different monsters, different difficulties. Because remember, classically, some of these, in terms of what your encounter rates are, is different. So that it could be that going through the desert is, or in this case, I don't think they have desert. Let's say going through the swamp, there's a worse chance for encounters, or a more chances for encounters in the swamps than there is on the coast. So that as a party, if you're looking at the map over here and you're figuring out you're in Port Nyanzaru, which is here, and you're thinking, oh, we could take this, get on this kind of coastal area and move around, or we can kind of go through, you might think and say, well, it's going to take us a lot longer to take the coast, but there's a lot less encounters. And when encounters are there, are going to tend to be more or easier. I'm going to try to turn this light again. I'm not sure why it's all. Let me switch this. No, that doesn't help. I got light. I got a window right here, and I feel like at this time of day, it's just, there we go. I feel like I'm just going to have to keep clicking that reset button. Okay. Let me just say this again. So, starting at Port Nyanzaru, or let's put it somewhere where the coast isn't quite so extreme, because in the Port Nyanzaru section, it's so much coastline. Let's say you're down here and I can't even read that, Refuge Bay, and you're trying to get to that spot over there, Kitcher's Inlet. You can kind of try to go baseline. You can try to cruise across the jungle pretty much straight. You can take this coastline. I like there to be differentiation between the times, right? So the coastline and hexes, it may not even be that different. It might just be a little bit longer. So what's the advantage on the coast? One advantage could be that it's easier to move. Okay, this is more hexes, but it's quicker pace than go there. Quicker pace. If you stick to the coast, you're not going to get lost. And then what are the encounters like? So I just like having those factors, right? Speed, encounter chance, coming together. Here they've kind of wiped the your speed is the same across the board. So that kind of part's taken out of the way. Then we'll just have to see when it gets to the second part, encounter chance, if that and the also not only encounter chance, but then the potential monsters, if that gives some more differentiation. Because I want those choices. I guess ultimately for me, I want the choices between which terrain the party chooses to go into to be as meaningful as possible. And so far, and just in terms of the travel times, it's not really. They're all the same. The more meaningful choice is if you have a canoe or a boat, take the rivers, which makes sense. I just like a little bit more than that, but we'll see what else they've got for us. So now we have a section on navigation. Have the players designate one party member as navigator. We already talked about that. The navigator might be an NPC, such as a guide, and the party can switch its navigator day to day. At the start of each new travel day, we make a wisdom survival check on behalf of the navigator. The result of the check determines whether or not the party becomes lost over the course of the day. The DC of the check is based on the day's most common terrain. DC 10 for coasts and lakes, 15 for jungles, mountains, rivers, swamps, and wastelands. Apply a +5 bonus to the check if the group sets a slow pace for the day. Okay, so they do get a bonus to that, because they didn't mention that in the other part, but that's good to know. Or -5 if they're moving at a fast pace. It's possible to get lost on a river by following a tributary instead of the main branch. If the check succeeds, the navigator knows exactly where the party is on the player's map of Chult throughout the day. If the check fails, the party becomes lost. Each hex on the map is surrounded by 6 other hexes. Whenever a lost party moves 1 hex, roll a d6 to randomly determine which neighboring hex the party enters, and do not divulge the party's location to the players. While the party is lost, players can't pinpoint the group's location on their map of Chult. The next time a navigator succeeds on their survival check made to navigate, reveal the party's actual location to the players. All right, so this is I would say this is a pretty good system, pretty good method. I'm gonna try to turn this light on again. Either too much light, not enough light. There we go. I think this is a pretty good system. So you're gonna make it's a passive check. You're gonna make it for your navigator every day. If they become lost, you're just gonna roll a d6 to see which hex they actually go into. You do it once per day, and if not, they know where they are. I think there is one element here that you may or may not like as a GM, which is that it seems like this is fairly player facing, in that you will basically, because the party can't. I guess they're assuming they have a map. Maybe they get a map somewhere early on. I don't remember in terms of the adventure if they get a map, but let's assume they have a map. That as soon as they're lost, if they ask, "Hey, where are we on the map now?" You're like, whoop. So they're gonna know pretty soon, sure, that they're lost, which may or may not make sense in the context. If they don't know they're lost and they're in the jungle, what's going to suddenly make them think they're lost? That's when you get that wisdom check. Oh, okay. So maybe we'd say, well, maybe I would say, okay, I'm not going to take their piece off, but this is where their piece and my piece might diverge, and on the GM's map versus the player's map. That's all just a stylistic thing, though. Perkins says, seems like they would have better luck staying close to land when at sea. Totally. I mean, you definitely want to stay on the coast and lakes if you can. I'm surprised they even have coasts and lakes as DC 10, because how lost can you get if you're on the coast? You could overshoot your mark, but can you really be lost? Or you could be lost, but only to a limited degree. Again, I kind of wish that they didn't merge together all the other terrain types: jungles, mountains, rivers, swamps, and wastelands. I kind of think that maybe differentiate those a bit. Give me some of that differentiation. Again, it adds to that decision making for the party when they're choosing what terrain to go into. It seems like they're kind of making all these terrains more or less the same from a mechanical standpoint, and I kind of wish they wouldn't. I mean, I can fix that myself, but Perkins says, a land, they need to set a landmark like a mountain as a guide. Yeah, I mean, this gets into, so we have the mechanics part, right? And then there's the kind of stuff like we saw when we looked at that bushcraft book a couple of weeks ago, with all the things that actual navigators do, such as finding landmarks, going from landmark to landmark. Your heading needs to be southeast, so you pick something that's southeast of you, and that's your landmark, and you're doing that. So you can add those elements in here. This is purely, I think that in a way, or I guess in a sense, that is all abstracted out into that navigation role or that survival role. You make that survival role, you've been picking your landmarks, you've been bloop, 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 moving down the line, and you're good. If you fail the roll, you lost track of your landmarks, you picked a landmark that you thought was in a direction and something happened and you don't know it, right? Oh, this tree out there, and then somehow you end up in another spot and you think that's your tree, but actually your tree was over there. Whatever. It's kind of all abstracted into these mechanics. You can role play it out however you want. And you might even say, if you're let's say this is somewhere where you could bring in that kind of expertise. So if you're a ranger and you not only have some some ranks, whatever. I mean, you're all going to have ranks and skills because the way it works. But let's say you have expertise in survival, then maybe you say to that ranger player, "Hey, ranger player, you lost track of your landmark, or you're getting close at landmark, and now you're looking. It's like you don't think that somehow you lost it, right? You can if you want to, then have some role playing with that character. And I stress kind of the ranger, someone else who has expertise in survival, because they are the ones I would say they're going to be maybe more alert about this part of getting lost. They're not just going to walk necessarily the whole day and then another day, and not have any inkling that they lost sight of their landmarks. You can do that, but I would save that for someone with expertise. Like that to me that's where the training comes in. You're trained on these landmarks, so you might be lost, but you're going to figure it out more quickly that you're lost and not just walk for another 8 hours. Oh, I'm not sure where I am, but I lost track of my sighting point, but I'm just going to keep walking. Like you can use their expertise. Of course, you can also use the fact of what are they doing with their fictional positioning? Are they telling you throughout the day as stuff's happening that they're trying to take more sightings or they're doing things? And clearly you can give them advantage, disadvantage, extra rolls, kind of whatever they would like. Or whatever works. Okay, so then we have dehydration, which seems interesting. When do you get create water in this game? Because that would be the one that takes this one out. Characters who explore Chult need plenty of water to stay hydrated. The water found in rivers and on the ground is unfit for drinking unless it is boiled first. If they have a rain catcher, which is a special item they can buy, characters can use it to collect rain and then store the water in portable containers. At the end of each day, any character who hasn't drunk at least 2 gallons of fresh water must succeed on a Constitution saving throw or suffer a level of exhaustion. The saving throw is made with disadvantage if the character is wearing medium armor, or heavy clothing. Characters traveling at a fast pace instead of a normal or slow pace, take a penalty on their saving throws against dehydration. And I'm not sure at this point why they just don't use disadvantage, but it says a -5 penalty. Characters traveling. Oops, let me move here. Characters traveling with beasts of burden and other animals must keep them fed and hydrated as well. And they send us over to the DMG for basic requirements based on creature size. Dinosaurs and other creatures native to Chult can forage for food and drink as long as they are in their natural habitat. Perkins says, avoiding wilderness hazards, not getting lost are good reasons to have a ranger in the party. Absolutely. So we have some notes on the dehydration, which I like. You can also use that for food. I mean, water, as if we know anything, we know that you need water more than you need food in short term in terms of survival. You will dehydrate and die faster than you will starve and die. But you could use a similar rule for food if you wanted to. If your party was in a situation where they might be low on food. They don't mention here actually doing things like hunting and foraging, or at least they haven't done it yet. We got some diseases. Always love me some diseases. I'm not going to go through these in super depth. So we got mad monkey fever you can catch, shivering sickness you can catch, throat leeches, and then some of Chult is undead territory. And then they've got a map showing us where that is. So that's kind of just a Chult thing. I do want to go to Appendix B quickly. I want to see what they tell us about the if there is any differentiation between the terrain types. Here we go. All right, Appendix B, random encounters. So this are so you got Portney and Zaru encounters. Let's see what they say about wilderness encounters. Says depends on how gritty you want the mechanics. Abstracting travel may fit what you want to include or exclude from play at the table. Absolutely, of course, you always have to work with take what's going to work for you and your table. While the characters are exploring or camping in the wilderness, roll a d20 3 times per day of game time, checking for encounters each morning, afternoon, and evening or night. An encounter occurs on a roll of 16 or higher. Roll percentile dice and check the wilderness encounters table with the terrain appropriate to where the characters are. After determining what the characters encounter, you can use the information presented later in this appendix to bring that encounter to life. Okay. And then, they're talking about undead area, and they also make mention here: if your players tire of random encounters, make such encounters less common. See, this is the thing, right? So once again, it seems like they're going to have different encounters and different terrain types, which thumbs up for me. What I would have liked is that the chances of encounters are different depending on where they are, which gives the party a reason to avoid, try to stick to, make those interesting decisions. Oh, hey, it's only a chance, instead of being a 20% chance, right? 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, or 25% chance of encounters. And if we're in the jungle, if we're in the coastal area, it's only a 10% or 15% chance of encounters. So let's stick to the coast as long as possible. That's smart. But the coast, it's further out of the way, whatever. Like the jungle's faster, the coast is safer. Like these are the kind of choices I want. And unfortunately, or just the way they've got it worked here, is your terrain choices don't matter very much. Now maybe it's much ado about nothing since most of the place is jungle, but still I would love parties to really think about how they're going to chart their course through these areas. Some folks might want to be like, "Ooh, let's stick to the coast, and then we'll just cut across as little part of the jungle as we can, or we'll avoid the jungle until we absolutely must to get somewhere, or we can go out of our way up the coast and then try to take a canoe down the river to some inland river part instead of going across the jungle." Like these are all should be interesting choices, but the rules don't really give the party, don't really make them interesting because nothing's really different. I mean, other than what they might encounter, which makes a difference, but we'll see how even different they are. Maybe they will be very different and give us the kind of differentiation that we want, or at least some of it, or maybe they won't. I'm not sure. Perkins says, I would openly tell the players that sticking to well-traveled roads and paths is safer. Their characters know where the danger is going to be found. Yeah, I mean, these are all things that I definitely make player-facing in my game. These terrains are more dangerous, but they might be faster for you. I want them to know this information generally. I'm not telling them, necessarily how much or in exact numbers or things, but hey, yeah. Hey, mountains, fastest way there, they're much more dangerous than sticking to the grasslands. Now, but the grasslands to get to the same spot, it's going to take you 3 times as long. Which would you like to do? That kind of thing. I just wish they built a little bit more of that in here. All right, so I do want to just take a quick look at the different encounter types. So on the beach, these are interesting. I mean, there's a whole bunch of different stuff here. I can't. It's a big table. I can't get it all on screen at once. I think. I don't know. I'm not sure that I would look at any one of these. What would be the most? They don't have. They don't have HD or anything or CR attached to any of these things. That would have been nice to put on this table. Is the CRs, because then I'd have maybe an easier time of knowing which ones might be better and which ones might be worse. You're rolling a D100. And on the beach, clearly there's a lot of stuff you're not going to find, but you're still going to find things like certain dinosaurs are hanging out on the beach. Velociraptors are on the beach. Red dragon might be on the beach. Frost giants could be on the beach. I'm not sure why. They take anything on vacation. I don't know. Sea hags are on the beach. I don't know what a triflower frond is, but that's on the beach. Sturges. Red wizards apparently are everywhere. So I'm not sure. It's interesting because I don't know that any of these are easier than others. They're different. Not everything appears in the same place. So for example, that red dragon only appears on the beach and then in the mountains and in the wastelands, but not anywhere else. So you take the jungle, you got some chances of doing different undeads areas, things, or depending on how much undead is there, whatever, but you could avoid the dragon. Well, you go to the mountains or the wastelands are there. I don't know that one of these screams out to me, this one's easier or another. So, knock, knock, land shark. I'm not sure which one I like better. Raptor Beach Blanket Bingo or is Annette Funicello in that one? Or Knock, Knock, Land Shark. Well, maybe if that was spelled Narc Land Shark, and it was some kind of CSI, sort of spinoff police procedural starring a land shark, Narc Land Shark, I'd watch. All right, so all of that, I'm not sure which one is easier. So we get some interesting rules here. To put a bow on it, so to speak. That's from Tomb of Annihilation. And I think they're reasonable. I think the thing. So I guess so. Here's where our bottom line is. You're looking to run some stuff in 5th edition. We're going to look at the. Let me see. So price wise, these books are all $50. If you were wanting to run wilderness adventuring in 5th edition and you wanted to use as much rules as written, kind of raw, what came out of wizards' mouths themselves, Accumulation is $50. And it's got only a little bit, right? To be fair, or to be honest, I've heard good things about the adventure. I've read parts of it. In terms of the different campaign books, I think it's one of the better thought of ones. Maybe I don't know if the meta's changed and what people like or dislike. It's pretty well thought of. It does have a little bit of the hex crawling stuff. It does have that, but it doesn't do as much differentiation things as I would like in terms of terrains, making choices about terrains, differentiating which terrains you take, which I think is kind of the hallmark of making it interesting. It's not about just as a role-playing exercise, as a narrative exercise, me describing these different terrain types as you enter or leave them as a party. I want you to be making decisions based on all these different factors. And for me, those factors are sort of your efficiency of movement, basically your speed, and the danger level. Here they've reduced all the speeds to essentially being the same, except if you're on a river. And then the encounter frequency is also the same. So other than it, really your choices become: do we want to take land or water? Which I feel like they could have done more with that had they chose, which they didn't. And it's it's not like it's the whole adventure, so maybe they just wanted to simplify it, because while hex crawling is a part of this, as you're moving around this island or the continent of Chult, it's not. There is a whole adventure going on, so maybe they didn't feel like they wanted to go there, but I don't think it would have cost them much to do some more differentiation. Do more than they did. No Fun Allowed. Hey, No Fun Allowed says the real off thing about Tomb of Annihilation is that it's natively a hex crawl where you have a quarter chance for an encounter 3 times a day, but in 5th edition you get a long rest every day, meaning resources aren't really spent. This is true. Yeah, so the encounter chance is you're rolling 3. You're right. You're rolling 3 times a day with a 25% chance. I think the thing is, the only real, I guess I would say, and I haven't played it, okay, so I have no idea how this bears out. But the thing we have to keep in mind here, theoretically, is that the encounters are not balanced the same way. So you can run into a whole bunch of something. So even though you only have your long rest per day, so you can Nova all that you like, but maybe you can't because there might be 2 other encounters then. And these encounters that you're getting aren't your run-of-the-mill, balanced for your 6 encounters a day. Maybe not. Maybe a party needs to take more care. I could foresee where a party mistakes their moment and goes Nova in their morning encounter, and then some unlucky dice give them encounters in the afternoon and evening, and they've only been able to get that short rest in there, and they're in trouble. So there is that. But yes, you're not getting you're going to have to, if you're intent on them getting 6 encounters a day in the wilderness and you're balancing them like you're doing in the dungeon. Remember, they do say in the beginning, these are not balanced, but if you were balancing them like you're in a dungeon, they're going to be kind of more or less pushovers if you're balancing it for that kind of 6 encounter a day dealio. Hey, Gashrin. Fighting Folk of the Haven Isles Kickstarter. Oh, that's not a joke title. I don't know. I don't know what Fighting Folk of the Haven Isles is, but is that a kind of OSR-ish jungle? Put my glasses down there for a second. No Fun Allowed also says, I'm currently running this now where short rest is 8 hours and long rest is a week. This makes encounters that much more scary, and you really feel the drain of an expedition. Yes, I think that's what I was going to mention. That I guess it's a good time to mention it while I'm getting this ready. In your kind of OSR sort of your and again, I'm going to use. I say again. I don't think I've mentioned this stream. For OSR, I'm using kind of a BX, so OSE/BX as my basis. There, the traveling can be a grind, even though you might not get many encounters today. I roll twice, but some people roll once. I think by the book you roll once. I like to roll for day and night and then hexes, so it kind of varies. But anyhow, you're rolling a couple times. But even if you get some encounters and you do some stuff and it turns out okay, any damage you take starts to wear down your resources. So sure, your magic users going to be able to rememorize their spells at the in the day, the next day, potentially, right? Take an hour or so you maybe don't have it count against movement. You say, oh, okay, yeah, sure, go ahead, do your spells. But your cleric, if they're high enough to have healing, might need to spend their spells to heal people. You have your frontline people who might be taking damage. That damage doesn't heal back very quickly. By the book, I think it's like 1 or 2 hit points a day. If so your fighter took 5 or 6 hit points damage in some stuff on day 1. So day 2, suddenly they're down. Yeah, maybe they got a hit point back over the night. Maybe they were able to get healed, but they're still down some points. Any hirelings might be down. Hopefully you didn't have to use any of your one-time magic items, your scrolls and things like that. You didn't have to, or use charges from a wand or a stave or anything like that. You can feel that grind of resources being depleted that you can't easily get back. And I think that's the real challenge in 5th. I feel like that's going to be the big challenge in 5th editions. You can't really replicate that same depletion because there's a lot more just healing built in. Okay, I'm going to use my my healing, whatever. I'm going to get my hit dice back. Okay, the clerics, got this. They're going to get that back. There's not as much of that stuff that's like, oh my gosh, yeah, sure, I can heal up to full, but we're going to have to spend 5 days camping here, which we can't do. Now, my players, I do a lot of that. Like, oh, can we try to take 2 nights or 2 days and not do anything so we can heal back? So you have those choices. 5th edition, you're not going to have that much because even if you have to spend that time, assuming there's no time pressures, then food and drink may or may not be an issue. If you've got that druid with Goodberry, then you can waste as much time as you want. So the scarcity, you have to kind of figure differently. Either you just have to just say, hey, we're not going to have that kind of scarcity. It's just not going to be a part of our game because we're in 5th edition. Or you have to maybe put time elements, some kind of ticking clock in place to force the party to make some of those difficult decisions that they don't have to make because depending on the party makeup, they may have a lot of ways out of the box to mitigate stuff that in your kind of old school game you didn't have until you were higher levels. Let's see. Perkins says they're running planar compass. I don't know planar compass. We have to check that out. There's so much stuff out there in the OSR stuff and NSR and all that stuff. I'm constantly discovering things I'd never heard about before. So here's this. I don't know. This came in the, what is this? It's a card box for all my cards. I'm not sure what cards I have, but hey, you get a card box with a nice. This is kind of an unboxing, so I literally just took it out of the plastic. Here we get the actual. Oh, here are some cards. Okay, so here are the cards. This is glossy. Oh, that's gonna. Let me see if I can. There we go. Does that work a little better? Get some of the glare. All this paper is very glossy. Okay, so let's get section first. Wilderness journeys. Oh, and this, let's see. Sorry. So I thought I said before that the Tomb of Annihilation is $50, $25. So half. We'll see whether this is worth or not. This one's $25 for the screen. What kind of wisdom do we get in the screen? So we do get this piece of glossy paper that says, this sheet provides guidelines for playing through wilderness travel and for keeping track of supplies during the journey. Journey cycles. A journey takes place in cycles that each represent the days spent traveling in the wilderness. The DM first decides whether the journey is short or long, depending on how long it will take the characters to reach their destination. The length of the journey determines how many days are represented by a cycle. Each cycle is 1 day in a short journey or 7 days for a long one. For each cycle, follow these steps in order. All right, so we're getting some very procedural advice, which is good. Now, if it's a short day, then we would do this cycle every day or one, yeah, right? And then if it was a long journey, we'd do each one of these cycles would be 7 days. So each cycle, we determine our weather. The DM determines the predominant weather conditions for the cycle. You either choose the weather or roll for it on the weather table on the GM screen. So we know we're getting a weather table. That's nice. Pace. The players choose their group's travel pace for the cycle, slow, normal, or fast, and then we'll get a table for that. Navigate. We decide whether the adventurers are at risk or losing their way, following the guidelines in a Becoming Lost section. Great. Encounter. Roll a d10. On a 1, the characters encounter something. This cycle, the DM either decides what happens or rolls on the Wilderness Encounter table. Interesting that the odds are different here. So here's a flat 10% chance of encounter. Doesn't matter what terrain you're on, and it's per cycle, not per day. So if you're doing a 2-week journey and you're just doing, so that would be, I guess, a long journey, then you would only roll twice for all 14 days. But if you were going on a short journey of 3 days, you'd roll every day. That's, or I suppose you could run that long journey as a short journey. I'm not sure. That's kind of an interesting way to phrase things. And anyway, so it's a flat 10% chance. Supplies, expend food and water for each creature in the party that must eat or drink. And then we've got a section for that. And then progress, we track the party's progress in miles for the cycle. You may use a hex map in this kit to keep track of the party's current location. So here they're doing miles by default, not hexes, which is also kind of interesting. Oh, Perkins says a planar compass is an OSR zine. Okay. I'm going to have to check into that. Fun planar adventure ideas. Always good. So Becoming Lost. Travelers are unlikely to get lost when following an established path or road with a landmark in sight. In those circumstances, assume a group of adventurers won't get lost. Here are the circumstances that can cause a group to lose its way. Basically, weather, traveling at night, just period. Dense forest, traveling underground, traveling at sea while unable to see the sky or any familiar land. The DM lets the group know when they're in one or more of those circumstances, and then the characters choose one of their number who must make a wisdom survival check against a DC appropriate to the terrain, which is on the screen, or the DCs are on the screen. Other members of the group can take the help action. Okay, I'm going to skip that part. If the check fails, the group spends 1d6 hours in a short cycle or 1 to 6 days on a long cycle traveling in a random direction. DM may roll a die to determine which hex the group ends up in on a map, such as the ones provided in this kit. I kind of like, this is interesting too. When did this come out? This must have come out post Tomb of Annihilation. Does it say here? Doesn't say here. Maybe it'll say here when this come out. I'm just curious. I kind of like the more simplified version where it's just, okay, they walked that day and now they're in a random hex instead of doing this hours or days. How much? Just, I don't know. It's that extra detail is not going to be super significant. I just feel like just plunk them in a new hex, depending on whatever some dice. If a random encounter occurs, the DM can roll on a table in a book like Xanathar's or use this encounter table, which is a D8. This one's interesting because they're giving us these very, very generic encounters. They're only, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 types of encounters. They're not really telling us a lot. They're kind of more telling us the scenario. So on a 1, a lone powerful creature appears. The DM chooses the creature, selecting one with a challenge rating that is 1 to 3 higher than the group's level. The creature lives in the area or is passing through, and it is hostile toward the group only if they provoke it. So something powerful, but really only 1 to 3 CR higher than the group's level, so it's not that much more powerful, but it's not immediately hostile. On a 2 to 4, you get hostile creatures prowl nearby. The DM chooses the creatures, selecting 5 with a challenge rating equal to the group's level. These creatures are either monsters native to the area or hostile travelers. On a 5 to 6, it's a group of friendly travelers. The travelers have 2d6 goods for sale that cost a gold piece or less on the adventuring gear table in the player's handbook. On a 7, the group discovers a monument. We have a table for that. On an 8, the group wanders into a strange place, and we have a table for that. So it's a mix, a little bit of a mix between encounters with creatures and encounters with, I guess we would call them kind of landmarks, secrets, at least in terms of monuments and weird locales. Ryan Smith says this was published after. Okay, that makes sense, I guess. Though some of the stuff I think I like how they did it in Tomb of Annihilation. So we do get a D20 of monuments and a D20 table of weird locales. Monuments could be stuff from sealed burial mound or pyramid, intact statue, great stone arch, fountain, so on and so forth. The weird locales could be a dead magic zone, which is similar to an anti-magic field, a wild magic zone. You roll on the wild magic surge table whenever a spell is cast in the zone. A boulder carved with talking faces, a wishing well, a giant crystal shard, a river ferry guided by a skeletal captain. Make sure there's a river nearby. A canyon containing a dragon's graveyard. So a lot of cool things in there. Not the most expansive list, but it's a nice little list. Food and water. Creatures require units of food and water every cycle. Food and water needs table lists the number of food units and water units. Gosh, why are they units? Units? What are we? Are we all eating Soylent Green? How many cubes of green do we need today, boss? Units weight is determined by the cycle. Oh, they're doing all this mathy stuff, which it's like just say, don't need to break it down. I guess it matters in terms of what you need to carry with you. So basically it's one, right? So it really is 1 pound / gallon of food / water. So a pound of food and a gallon of water per day. It's really, and then the long cycle is just multiplying that by 7. And then we've got, depending on your size, how much you need to eat. So a large thing needs 4 units. And then the costs. That's fine. I guess I feel like if you're playing 5th edition, you're probably not super interested in doing the accounting. So I would, this is something where I could have used a usage die or something else to kind of make it simplified for 5th edition. Because I'm guessing that most people playing 5th edition aren't interested in breaking out units and pounds and gallons and all that. Brian Smith says, lunchtime, don't forget your food units. Hey, Tony Nom. I do read 5e sometimes. I'm not averse to some 5th edition stuff from time to time. Tracking supplies. We do have a supply tracker. Great. And you gain exhaustion if you're unable to eat or drink. Foraging. So Tomb of Annihilation did not give us any, like you guys can't see it, did not give us any guidance for foraging, but this does. Characters can hunt or gather food and water while the party travels at normal or slow pace. Foraging character makes a survival check against a DC determined by the terrain. And we've got a table for that on the screen itself. And then you can gather some food units equal to 1d6 plus their wisdom modifier, and you can repeat the roll, or you do repeat the roll for drinkable water. And that's the end of that 2-pager. So it's glossy, so you can spill your energy drink on there and it won't harm it a bit. Here's another glossy page that gives us ye old supply tracker. Oh, I guess you can, you know what, I'm guessing there's no reason for the other one, but for this one, I'm imagining maybe you could use wet erase markers on here to I think I don't think they've explicitly said you can, but I'm imagining you can. Oh, we also get a hex map. So you get a nice little blank hex map for you. Again, you could just draw some simple symbols on there with a wet erase. Or would this be a dry erase? I don't know. Some kind of erasable marker. Brian Smith says, the usage die seems like the simple kind of mechanic 5e should adopt for an exploration type playstyle. The mathiness is definitely incongruous. Yeah, I think so. I mean, it could have been that they just didn't. I have to imagine that the designers had seen usage dice. I don't know if this 5th edition used usage dice for anything. I don't think so. Yeah, something could have been something simple. But yes, I agree that just having somebody manage a die type is given. And again, like from an OSR old school perspective, I don't mind the tracking so much. But I just know from what people say in 5th edition players, the community in 5th edition doesn't seem to be wild about doing that stuff. So just being cognizant of that, dropping a food unit, whatever system as Brian Smith says, a little bit incongruous. Could have gone with something simpler. Something simple that gets you most of the way there probably would have worked just as well. So now we have wilderness chases. This is something that comes up fairly often, right? Folks getting chased around or wanting to know how to run a chase. When a chase begins in the wilderness, we can use these rules. So we have playing a chase. We establish. I'm gonna kind of just do the bullet points. So you establish positions. We roll initiative. We roll for a complication. We have these complications, a whole table of complications. There's only a 50% chance of a complication happening. You don't always get one. You move and take an action, and then you begin the next round. So you basically run it as kind of as a combat, essentially. And I'm guessing that the complications, this is out in the wilderness, so these complications are wilderness-centric. So let's see. One example. Unfortunately, I can't get it on. I'll read one of these that's on the screen. One example is a stream, ravine, or rock bed blocks your path. You have to make a strength or dexterity, make an athletics or acrobatics check, player choice, to cross the impediment. On a failed check, the impediment counts as 10 feet of difficult terrain. Why 10 feet? I don't know. Oh, it's a dry erase. Okay, so all these are dry erase, not wet erase. So do not use wet erase. Wet erase. All right. I'm not sure why they do 10 feet as opposed to saying you get stuck for a round. But I think what the complications do, which is good, is they're wilderness themed. And if you're always wondering, you always get up in that situation where you're running a chase with this concept of, if I'm running 30 feet per round and they're running 40 feet per round, and it doesn't matter whether we're sprinting, dashing, whatever thing to use, they're always going to be that X amount of feet ahead of us. So how can we ever catch them? Or how can the monsters ever catch the party if the party has that 10 feet? Or even it's the same. The party starts out 20 feet in front of the monsters. Everyone's movement rate is the same. How do they ever catch up? The chase complications give you this thing of, this is how you can catch up. You're chasing something, they come up against that stream, they miss that check, suddenly they're slowed down, or I would just say they're stuck for that round. Now you've caught up. Now you're on top of them. Or vice versa. You are chasing, they make it over the stream, you get there, you get stuck, now you've fallen back. And then at some point you could say, well, whatever I don't know if they come up with, doesn't seem like they come up with how it resolves, but you could just get to a certain buffer of distance. Like, okay, you get past 120 feet. They ever get 120 feet ahead of you, you ever get 120 feet ahead of them, they'll, the pursuit will stop. So you can run like that. Worker says they've run city chases as skill challenge, but it's nice to have something for wilderness chases. Yeah, and the thing is, I kind of like this system. If you don't want to do it as a skill challenge, and you want to do it something like this is kind of nice. It's basically a simplified combat. I could see rewriting some of these for a urban proposition. I could even see writing these for kind of a dungeon proposition as well. They'd be more generic, but it could be stuff like you turn a corner and you're getting caught, you trip on a loose flagstone, something else, all these different things, especially if you're running and so you're not able to use your dungeon maps. We're 5th edition, probably not mapping, so you've got the map out in front of you, but you could probably come up with some generic dungeon ones too if you wanted to run pursuit in a dungeon. So pretty easy. I like that it leans in on the stuff we're already doing for combat, so you don't have to learn some new system. It's basically, other than the complication part, it's essentially just moving and taking an action, right? Is there anything on the other side of this? Oh, there's more. Oh, so we've got a bit on dashing. Stop moving camera. Thank you. Ryan Smith says getting up from prone uses half your movement. That's another way to catch up. Yep, if you can knock somebody down, absolutely. Or if they trip or fall over. So you can dash, you can take reactions. Oh, here we go. End the chase. Chase ends when one side or the other stops. Yeah, that would end the chase. When the quarry escapes, or when at least one pursuer is within 5 feet of the quarry. So that just means they're caught. So, okay, what is escaping? If neither side gives up the chase, the quarry can make a stealth check at the end of each round after every participant in the chase has taken a turn. An incapacitated quarry can't make this check, nor can a quarry without anything to hide behind. The check's total is combined to the passive wisdom score of the pursuers. If the quarry consists of multiple creatures, they all make the check. If the total of the quarry's check is greater than the highest passive score, the quarry escapes, is no longer in the chase. So basically, they can try to hide behind stuff, and they gave some factors. I don't know if I love that. I would say there's got to be some minimum distance. If I'm 10 feet behind the guy, and then he goes ducking around the corner. Like, I know he went around the corner. Like, I'm not fooled. I'm not going to keep running down, assuming it's like a T section. Like, I went around the corner. You missed me? No, I saw you. So I would definitely say either, I mean, I guess they say, like, you got to have something to hide behind. So I guess that's the part of it, right? It's like going to be up to player talking to the GM to say, yes, I've got something to hide behind. No, I don't. So it's very situational, but it seems a bit, it just seemed like it's something that if you don't kind of, I mean, it's kind of an edge case anyway. How often are we running these kind of pursuit things? Not that much, but something I want to figure out. You could split up and then it's possible to get role reversed. Great. So that was Wilderness Chases. I have another sheet on actions in combat. I think this is just, I'm not going to read through this one because I'm guessing this is just to have because this is a screen. But interesting, these are all loose pages, and we get more hex maps. So get your dry erase markers going. Look at that. This one, double-sided hex map. Because this is a DM screen, so it's not just for Wilderness, but this one, this screen, this version of the screen is definitely, and I haven't looked at any 5th edition screens. This one definitely is Wilderness focused. So we get a bunch of, what are these? Tokens or cards for conditions. So you get some, I like these nice drawings. I like the deafen. The guy's got one of those ear horns. Grappled. The guy's being held by some kind of Cthulhian octopus creature. A wyvern is sitting on somebody, incapacitating them, so on and so forth. Then we get another set here. Some more. Great. Now we get some initiative cards. This is nice. I don't know. I've never used this kind of card system. Are you meant to hold on to these as the GM, or do you hand these out to the players and put them on your monsters? I'm not sure, but you've got them. A nice thing. Now we get to the actual screen itself. Nice, hard. I don't know. I don't know what it is. It feels nice. I'm guessing it's some kind of hard board. It feels like kind of, it's going to sound weird. Not sound weird, but it's like board game board. It's definitely stiff. It's got some thickness to it. It's kind of got a matte. I'm not doing a very good job showing this. It's kind of got a matte, but a nice finish. And then interesting because it's not as chock full of tables as you might have expected. It's actually got a lot. So I'm going to kind of sweep it. This is going to be hard to do properly. So this is one leaf or one fold. We've got, this is all our kind of, let's see, a bunch of tables. So this includes travel pace, services, encounter distance, wilderness navigation, audible distance, cover, light, obscured areas, visibility, outdoors, vessel speeds, food, drink, and lodging, and foraging DCs. So this is all good, and this is all pretty much either, wilderness adventuring or wilderness adventuring adjacent. So that is all good. Now we get in the next leaf or fold. We got our weather, and then we have some notes about extreme wind, extreme heat, strong wind, and then we get onto some conditions: prone, restrained, unconscious. Then we go to the next fold. We've got, get that in there, invisible, paralyzed, petrified. But I think the thing is that's interesting is these are all the drawings. Things make it very neat, but it's not actually compressing a ton of information in there, but it is in kind of nice English to read. And then finally, we got kind of some general notes: setting a DC, tracking DC's damage by level and severity, object hit points, object armor classes, and some skills, and then stuff on jumping, suffocating, concentration, and exhaustion. And then I'll just fold over. We can see it's kind of a nice, we get sort of this, I don't know, crater kind of scene, a old ocean that disappear, and then we get this sort of kraken attacking an old ruin on a lock or a lake, and then a dragon flying over here, and another dragon over here. Perkins says looks nearly the same as the 5e screen they have from years ago. Yeah, I imagine it's I imagine it would be. All right. So we got two things here, right? That we got to kind of wrap this up. Hold on a second. Let me go grab Tomb of Annihilation back. So what do we got? So we already went over kind of my homebrewed framework for wilderness adventuring, which I think holds up pretty well. Tweak the numbers, play around with a little bit. I mean, I did them kind of on the fly, but I feel like all in all, seeing as what they came up with, I don't think I was that far off. And there's some stuff that I think I appreciate, which is more differentiation between terrains. There's really nothing in what they give you either here or in the sheets that has any differentiation between different terrain types. The only difference you're seeing, if you were to take this screen and this was going to be your sort of rules as written, the only difference between terrain types is what you would potentially encounter. And I like a little bit more granularity than that. But maybe if you're playing 5th edition, you don't want or need that. You're saying, hey, you know what? I don't need it. That's just gonna be kind of narrative, set dressing kind of stuff, and I'm gonna let it ride. I like that more differentiation. The Tomb of Annihilation gave us some good stuff. If you're running deserts and things like that, it's going to give you, or not deserts, jungles, and that kind of area, sort of chilt-ish sort of terrain. You're going to get some help there in terms of your encounters, things you can encounter, stuff like that. Seems like a cool book, but it's $50. So I don't know if I would buy Tomb of Annihilation just if I were running Wilderness Adventures. I probably would pass. The screen, assuming I don't have one, assuming I don't have a screen already, I would potentially buy the screen. I mean, I did buy the screen because I was interested in it. If you have a screen already, does it give you more things than you might have had before? I don't know. Perkins, did your screen from years ago, did it have wilderness stuff built in it, or was just kind of vanilla? So I think there is enough guidance in here with the screen. If you needed a screen, if you wanted a screen, and you did want some of the guidance, I think it's worth it. It's probably not worth it for just one or the other. Because I think, I spent some time and put one together, and I was able to put one that's decent. And I just did it for nothing, and just did it on my own for free. Don't need the screen to do that. But if you're someone that likes raw, your table likes raw, meaning rules as written, and your table kind of likes that stuff, and you need a screen anyway, it's $25. Maybe you can find it for cheaper. I don't even remember if I bought. I don't remember when I got a hold of it. If I got it on sale somewhere, I don't recall. Brian Smith says, yeah, normal or difficult terrains, but the only mechanical difference. Yep. Perkins is going to check their screen. Well, I think in terms of what you get with the screen, it's fine. You do get some dry erase hex maps. So if you're playing in person, I mean, this is the other thing too, right? So many people are playing digitally now. These things are good. I mean, the screen, it's nice, but if you're playing with D&D Beyond and Roll20 or whatever combination that has all this stuff in here, presumably, then you don't need it at all. If you're playing in person, I think having some erasable hex maps like these is fun. And having the information on doing some of the stuff, the chases is good, I think. The stuff on journeying is fine. I don't quite get the cycles. It just seems to be needless. Just have it be one thing per day and just leave it at that. But maybe there's some reason they want to differentiate that. It's kind of like how far do you have to want to abstract travel? If you were trying to abstract months at a time, I guess they're saying use the long cycle. If you're doing short tracks of time, use the short cycle. But I'm not sure I don't know. It's a little bit weird. And then that's basically, that is it. Brian Smith says I should design my own DM screen built for hex crawling on one of these live streams. I mean, we could go over what I'd like to, that might be a thing is to include. Maybe we'll do that. What would I include? What would be my hex crawling GM screen? Because the thing is, the GM screen, probably you don't want it to just be for hex crawling. You want to have your just kind of stuff, because it's going to be not just for hex crawling, but other parts of the game. Maybe I'd say, like, here's my, it'd be good to think of like what a one-pager, maybe, landscape modes that you could fit it on a screen might look like. If I was going to do a one-pager for hex crawling, what kind of stuff would I want on there? That might be a nice exercise because I'd want my screen to not just be 100% hex crawling. Perkins says not much. Travel pace, encounter distance, something happens, quick finds. Okay, so there is some differentiation there, which is good. Folks, that's all I got. If you could give a thumbs up on your way out, that would be awesome. Let me know what other stuff you'd like to do or like us to cover in terms of 5th edition. I think next time I'll go back to my board here, which I thought maybe I'd go back to today, and then we didn't end up getting there, but that is quite okay. But I can see here I have all kinds of distances and counter chances that change and getting lost that changes on your train, which I like because I want interesting choices. And I think particularly in 5th edition, if you want your party to care about these things, there has to be, in essence, gameable elements. And one of those gameable elements is, okay, you say you have a map, you need to get from A to B. How are you going to get there? How are you going to do it? And those decision points of, okay, we could go straight across, and them going, yeah, but that's going to take us through the jungle and the mountains, and those things are rotten, and it's tough, and there's dragons in there and everything. And then, or we could take the coast, which is nice and clear, but it's not that fast, and it's going to take us way out of our way. All these is just decision points I want to matter. And I think in terms of 5th edition, I think you almost need to put even more emphasis on those things mattering, because some of the other survival elements are going to be not matter so much depending on your party composition. Let's see. Perkins says, do I do rings of danger around city or town sites? I tend to, there's definitely less. Yeah, I tend to look at kind of this inhabited kind of hex type is one where things are. I do tend to myself, yeah, when I'm building out in particular areas, if you're right out here in the grasslands outside of town, it's not the same danger as the grasslands that are 1,000 miles from anywhere civilized. But I don't know that I've formalized it. Maybe I could look at kind of formalizing a system of rings of danger, not rings of power, but rings of danger. Yeah, I get what you're saying though, Perkins, about kind of like your dungeon levels. Absolutely. I mean, I don't have something formalized, but I think it's not a bad idea at all. But with that, I'm going to call it quits for the day. Like I said, if you could give the thumbs up on your way out, that'd be awesome. If you feel like subscribing and you found yourself in here and you haven't subscribed yet, that would also be awesome. Otherwise, folks, have a great rest of your day, night, whenever you end up watching and listening to this. Game on, everybody. And I will talk to you later. Bye now.